Cool. All right. Well, let's get
Okay.
going.
Okay. So I really don't know how to introduce them, but we're just gonna go with it. So, hello everybody out there. So for today, we are doing an interview with Mr. Trevor Howe, as I say his name correctly, Trevor Howe, for Greater Than Carreers, is what I think we're gonna be calling it. So Trevor lives in Portland, Oregon, and he is a
So I'm the center director of a place called Huntington Learning Center, and it's basically like a tutoring and education center that has franchises all over the country. I think we have like 400 all across the country. And there are a couple in Oregon, and so I'm the center director for the one in Beaverton, Oregon, which is right outside of Portland. I started as actually a tutor, just teaching, working with students one-on-one, and then as I learned more about the company and like got more involved with things, I started moving up, and after that, I was assistant director for maybe a year and a half, and then end of last summer, beginning of last fall, 2020, I was promoted to center director, and so that's my current role right now.
okay, super awesome. So like, what's like a brief overview of like your responsibilities within the center director position?
Sure. So in a nutshell, it's kind of right now running everything, which is in a kind of a short sense, the services we provide, we have kind of three branches. We have something called Learning Center, which is like skills development, and that's primarily for like K through 8, but it technically includes K through 12.
Okay.
We have exam prep, which is for test prep for primarily like SAT, ACT, but we do other tests too. Like I'm actually working with a student right now who's taking a test called the ASVAB, which is what you take to like get into the military.
Yeah.
And so we have those as well. And then the last service is kind of what you would traditionally think of as tutoring, and that's called subject tutoring. And that's basically where like students can come in and bring their assignments and stuff, and we help them and work on that, and that sort of thing. And so at the moment, I'm sort of running all three services. Generally speaking, they're a little bit more divided in that like one person would run one service, one person would run another. But at the moment, I'm sort of wearing many hats and
Okay.
running all three.
But typically, it's kind of like what you said, where there's someone who's in charge of every department, and you oversee those people, essentially speaking.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so, it varies. My responsibilities vary from everything from teaching, I still do quite a bit of teaching, to the day-to-day operations, staff management, working with the tutors and teachers to make sure they have what they need, um, things like scheduling, parent conferences to check in with like how a student's program is going, um, marketing as well, kind of external operations. I do a little bit of that, and so sort of, a little bit of everything. And in that regard, it's definitely not boring, because
Yeah, clearly.
every day is a little bit different as far as what I'm handling or what I'm taking care of.
Okay. So I know that you said that you kind of started out as a tutor for the center, right?
Hmm hmm
So what got you interested in like the role that you're in now, or maybe being a tutor in the first place?
So in high school, I went to a Jesuit high school, and they were very big on service and community service and stuff. And so in our senior year, everybody got sort of assigned to like these different projects. And the one that I got assigned to was a program called, I think it was called like Great Books. And so every week we would go to a local grade school or middle school and like teach a class about a particular like short story or something. And so that was kind of my first exposure into education. And then throughout the past, I mean, since then, that was what, 15, 16 years ago.
Okay.
I dabbled in lots of different educational fields. Like I taught overseas, taught English. I've been a private tutor, and then a few years ago, I kind of got the itch to get back into education, and so I started looking for opportunities and started researching different places that have openings, and found about Huntington, and it was very much in line with what I like to do. You know, a lot of people in education will go like the classroom route, which is great for a lot of people. For me, I tend to prefer more like the one-on-one kind of individual instruction interaction. And so that was one of the things that really caught my eye as far as why I wanted to get involved with Huntington. And so that's kind of where everything got started. But my beginnings in education were very early on.
Okay, that's cool though. Sounds like a good like community center project for your high school that you used to go to, so it's pretty awesome. So what does a typical day look like for you, or what is a typical day supposed to look like for you from like when you wake up to when you go to bed? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so you know, generally our centers operate most of the day. So like for example, our hours right now are 10 to 7. And so, you know, what a day looks like for me is kind of a sprinkling of everything, in the sense that like I'll do some teaching. So like, well, today, for example, I think is a good illustration of a lot of the different things that I do. So this morning I did some teaching. I taught one student who's in our Learning Center program. Then I taught another student who's doing an exam prep program. I had some meetings with some of my coworkers who are in our other centers in the area. Then I had like a parent conference later today, which I had at about 4, and that was to go over like how her granddaughter's program is going, you know, what she's been working on, things like that. And then later today, in a few hours, we have like a teacher meeting, and generally do those like once every 4 to 6 weeks. And so then after that, you know, day wraps up, and go home. So,
I got you.
but yeah, I mean, that's sort of what I mean by the fact that like I do a lot of different stuff. And so, you know, I throughout today I've worn a few different hats and
Yeah.
had to deal with different things. And so, you know, it's kind of nice that like if there is one thing that you don't like doing, you're not doing it all day. You're just like, it'll get done, and then you get to go on to something else that maybe you like to do more.
It's cool that you still get to be able to like do the one-on-one tutoring as a director as well. That must be kind of like still really up your alley, and you really like that, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and like technically it's supposed to be something that directors do less of, but because, and this is one of the cool things that I think I really appreciate about like the person who owns our centers. He is very much like, okay, this is how the position looks on paper, but we can mold it to fit like your personality or what you're looking to
That's
do with
cool.
it.
That's really
So
cool.
for me, teaching is very much something that I really like, and so I don't want to have to give that up. And so, you know, there are times when I'm probably like teaching more than I should, but it is certainly something that like I don't have to not do. And so, you know, whereas like marketing and stuff, not such a fan of that. Obviously, I have to do it, but like that's what I mean by if there's something that you don't enjoy, it's going to be counterbalanced by getting to do something that you do enjoy.
That's positive. That's really, really positive. It's cool that he runs it that way too. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so how many hours a week are you working with this position right now?
So at the moment, because of the fact that I'm running all the different services, I'm generally working between like 50 and 60 hours a week.
Okay.
Um, in theory, it should be more like a 40-hour a week job. You know, the higher up you get in terms of the positions here, like just the fact that you have more responsibilities means that your hours do get a little bit longer. And also the fact that we are a smaller center and we don't have as many full-time staff, so it's harder to like pass stuff off.
Yeah.
So I have to be available fairly often. And so in that sense, that's kind of why I'm working like 60 hours a week. That said, um, it's not uh, something that like it once we get more staffed, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be the case. So
I think it's one of those things too when you enjoy your job. I know when I used to manage a gym was like when you wear a lot of hats and you enjoy your job, it's really easy to like, oh, I'll stay 30 minutes and do X,
yeah,
and that adds up.
exactly. Yeah, like this morning, technically we don't open till 10, but I had a student who like had a paper due and she needed a session this morning. And so I ended up coming in at 8 and did like an online session with her. And so like that's something that I didn't have to do, but it was important to me and I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. So like, yeah, like did I have to come in a few hours early? Yeah, but it was for something that I wanted to do. It wasn't like someone put a gun to my head.
That's
It was
positive
like,
though.
come in, yeah.
Uh, so another question I'm kind of curious about because I don't think I've ever asked you this. And I'm gonna take this point in time in the video that I haven't said already. I've actually known Trevor for what, 5 years? It's five,
Um,
6 years,
yeah, 5,
something
maybe
like that,
6.
right? Okay, so
Yeah.
I've never asked you this question though, which is why I actually look forward to asking you. What was the first job you ever worked? Like in high school, out of high school, college, whatever it may have been.
Yeah, so the first job, like official job, like paycheck job, um, was actually working at a high school friend's mom's jewelry company. And it wasn't like selling jewelry. All of the stuff they sold was via catalog.
Oh, okay.
So what we were doing, like at the beginning, what I did was actually I did the photographs for the catalog, which wasn't as exciting as it sounds. It's basically taking pictures of a lot of stuff on white backgrounds, and then basically touching it up to like with Adobe and something like that. So I really had no like previous experience in any of that. So it was a lot of just kind of them telling me what to do, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do that. Um, but yeah, that was the first place, and that was a summer job between my junior and senior year of high school.
Okay.
And yeah, so I worked there for a few months over the summer, and it was definitely an interesting experience. I mean, there's stuff I had to do there that I've never done anywhere else. But yeah, didn't lead anywhere.
I got you. I got you. A little bit different between jewelry and a learning center, obviously.
For sure, yeah.
So to be the director of a learning center, is there an amount of education that you need, or is it like a career path that you can work your way up in, or both, or
It's a little,
that's
it's,
your
it's,
spot?
yeah, it's a little of both. I mean, in order to work at the learning center, at least in our centers, I don't know if this is true of like centers across the country, but they require a bachelor's.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what kind, it's just a 4-year degree. You know, a lot of the people that I work with, whether they're full-time staff or tutors, do have like they might be a licensed teacher or they might have a master's in education. So there's certainly a lot of people I work with who do have like postgraduate degrees or postgraduate certifications, things like that. I
Okay.
don't. I just have my experience and my background.
Okay.
And so in that regard, I think I'm sort of living proof that you don't need like a ton of credentials in the formal sense.
I got you.
But certainly it's something that, there are people who like start at this position who are kind of headhunted. There are other people like me who just kind of fall into it after a few years of working at the center. So, it's very much just sort of depends, I guess, on where you're living and what openings there are.
Okay.
Um, so it's a
Obviously,
little bit of kind of just what the situation is where you are.
I got you. You
Um,
obviously have your bachelor's degree though, right?
yeah, that's probably a fair requirement that you can
Okay, okay.
expect to be asked about.
Where'd you go to school?
You mean high school or
Oh,
college?
college.
Okay. I went to Georgetown, which
Okay.
is in Washington, D.C., and I was there from 2005 to 2009. And my major when I was there, so I was an English major, like a literature major,
Okay.
and then I had a Chinese minor, which is actually sort of what led me to do what I did right after college, which I moved to China in the late summer of 2009 and ended up spending 4 years teaching English over there. And again, that was very much born out of the fact that I wanted to go to China because I'd been there on like study abroad programs and just really enjoyed it. But also out of the fact that I enjoyed teaching, and I was like, well, there are a lot of teaching jobs over there. It's kind of something I enjoy doing. So this is a great opportunity to go where I want to go. And so, yeah, I ended up spending 4 years in a relatively small town, I guess, teaching at a university there to teach English.
Okay, okay. So when you were there, you were teaching English as a second language, though, right?
Hmm hmm
Okay. And do you feel like that experience kind of helped you get into the job you have now as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely was obviously very good teaching experience in the sense of teaching. Um, but I think it also just helped me become more comfortable interacting with like different kinds of students and understanding different students' needs. And also, it was the first time really working with other like education colleagues. And so things like, collaborating on lesson plans or like co-teaching or talking to people about, problem solving particular issues and things like that. And so, whereas in before most of my education was like I said, either in that community service program or just like one-on-one tutoring. So it gave me a lot of experience dealing with like fellow teachers and things like that. And when I was teaching abroad, that was a classroom. And so it gave me classroom experience as
Okay.
well.
Makes sense. So, do you feel like there's specific like experience or like accomplishments or accolades that people could acquire if they wanted to get in your job that would be helpful, or like experience like aside obviously one of the one would be like you just said, which is teaching like in a classroom. Is there other things like that you think would help like propel someone forward to your position?
Yeah, I mean, there's really no limit to what can end up being helpful.
Okay.
So, when we hire people, whether they're tutors or like staff people, they don't necessarily have to come from like an explicitly teaching background. Or a lot of people we hire, like maybe they haven't taught in a while and they've been doing something else and they want to get back into teaching. And so, there are definitely formal things that a person could have, like credentials, certifications, things like that. But really, more important, I think, than anything is just having practical experience. And again,
Okay.
it doesn't necessarily have to be like teaching, in a classroom, but it could be something where, like you and I obviously know that, we worked in retail together and like obviously I'm not like talking to people about vitamins here. But but like dealing with people and
Yeah,
sorry, I
yeah.
just did. Um and like interacting. One of the things that I think I actually got a lot out of working retail was like sort of having to be on all the time, in the sense that like a customer could come in at any point and you have to have a pleasant interaction with them,
Yeah, yeah.
that sort of thing. And the same thing can happen here, like whether it's working with a student or like a parent, or you get a phone call. And so having to be able to engage at not a moment's notice, but like pretty consistently, and that was something that I think I really got a lot out of. And so, I've worked a lot of other jobs where they don't have any kind of direct translation into what I'm doing here, but the people skills that I built up are like super helpful. I mean,
Okay.
as a kid, I was like a very shy person, and if you were to tell me back when I was in like grade school or high school that I would be working with in like primarily people businesses, I would have thought you're crazy. So yeah, so those are hugely important. And so, like I said, you could definitely have formal credentials, and those are super helpful. I mean, they look great on paper. I think more than anything, those are sort of things that help you get your foot in the door.
Okay.
But then the more practical abilities that you have, whether it's like dealing with people or working as a good team member, or attention to detail, being motivated, being a self-starter, having initiatives, all those sorts of things are definitely traits that we look for when we hire people, whether it's to teach or to be a staff person.
Okay. Sounds good. So within your role, your career as a center director, what's your favorite thing, or the thing you think is the best about your career, your job?
Um, I would have to say the teaching part. I mean, there's just so much to it that I enjoy. I mean, I like imparting knowledge, I guess. It maybe that sounds weird, but like being able to take something that I know and teach someone how to do that. And then also like the successes that you see in the students you work with. Like, um, this student, for example, I was working with, who was taking the ASVAB test, like he passed and now he gets to go into the Marines, which is like his lifelong dream. And to be able to like be a part of that journey, that will probably define that person's like the remainder of their life in one way or another, is like pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or like working with kids who, don't have, they come in and they have like zero confidence in themselves and they feel like they can't do anything. And then all of a sudden a couple months go by and it's like, look at all this stuff you've done. And they're like, oh my gosh, like I can succeed. And so like the helping part is huge. And I just feel like the teaching is where you see that most directly. Obviously, there are lots of other aspects of my job when I'm helping people, but in that case, it's you kind of see the fruits of your labor most immediately.
It sounds super rewarding, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, very.
And I definitely know what you're saying as far as like imparting your knowledge on somebody else. I know when we used to work together, I remember how happy you'd be when someone would ask you a question. You'd be like, "This is all the
Right,
information you need to know," and now you just
exactly.
go. And I used to
Yeah,
feel the exact same way. It's always fun to like help somebody understand something or figure out the best way to do something and just try and help give someone direction. It's a very rewarding feeling.
yeah, and like for me, I mean, obviously, I don't do this like for myself, but to be able to be in a situation where someone's like, I need help with X. And then I'm like, oh, I'm really good at X. And I can show them how to do it or help them work through something and be like, I was uniquely positioned to be able to help this person. Like, I don't know, it makes you feel valuable or appreciated. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of cool too.
So
Um,
on the flip side of things, I always hate to ask the question, but it's always something that I feel like people want to know. What's something that you like least, or like maybe like the worst part about being the director?
yeah. Um, I would say, and this is not a terribly big thing, but I would say just the money part. And what I mean by that is like having not necessarily having to talk about money because like it's not free, but there will be cases where a student will come in and they will take like an evaluation and it'll show that like they need a lot of help and their parents just can't afford it, or um, it's yeah, so they can't do the program and they can't get the help that they need, and so having to go through that is a little frustrating. And obviously that's, I think, where there are some differences in the sense that like if you ended up being a classroom teacher, I guess unless you worked at a private school, like you don't really turn kids away because it's a school.
Yeah.
Whereas here, like we sort of have to occasionally because in that regard we are like a business.
Yeah.
And we bend over backwards to try to accommodate, and so fortunately I don't have to do that very often, but there are definitely times. um, the other thing I would say that in conjunction with that that's a little frustrating is like we are part of a larger corporate structure, and so occasionally there's more push than I would like to like sell. um, and I am just not a very pushy person to begin with, and so like I don't know, I don't that's just something that doesn't come naturally to me, so I don't like enjoy it a ton.
Yeah. I understand. Sales is hard. It's not fun always.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so excuse me. On your way, like kind of like working up the ladder at the center, was there any like pitfalls or obstacles that you had to overcome, or like things you had to like work through to get to where you are?
Do you mean like in terms of the job itself, or?
Like I guess like progressing up the ladder. You started as a tutor, and then you were an assistant, and then you're the director. So was there like any like obstacles or like hurdles you had to overcome to like get to where you are, or things like
Um, I would say that maybe the biggest thing was just there was I mean, as is true with I think a lot of jobs at the beginning, there was kind of a steep learning curve. And
okay,
so there were definitely times where like I maybe doubted myself, like, gosh, can I do this? Or like, am I the right person for this? I think some of that is born out of like maybe just my personality, but um, yeah, I would say that there were times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to learn all this stuff. It was kind of like overwhelming.
I got
Um, so I think perhaps it's not necessarily a pitfall, but something to be aware of either in education. And I think, I think this is true of teaching in general. Like I remember the first time I had a classroom, which was in, other than the Great Books program, was in China. And I remember going to bed that night after my first class and being like, what am I doing? Like, like I don't know how to do this. And so I think self-doubt is maybe something that obviously is not unique to education, but um, for me, that was probably the biggest thing I had to deal with. And so what
you
helped me
overcome
get
that.
through that was just recognizing that like everybody feels that way, and just being patient and
Okay.
realizing like there are going to be days where maybe the teaching doesn't go so well, or like maybe you don't learn everything you were supposed to learn that day and that sort of thing. But fortunately, I work with very like kind people.
They let you get off the hook a few times.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're like a little more forgiving than maybe other people might be.
I got you. I got you. I'm sure that it was a little bit easier when you're teaching English as a second language too, because if you mess up, they might be like, "Oh, I don't know if that was right or wrong. I don't know. It sounds right."
Yeah, yeah, no, it's funny. For years teaching English, I didn't realize that like in Great Britain that they call maths with an S. And so for years I was teaching students that that was like wrong, and then I realized like, oh, it's not. So yeah, definitely I think there were some things. Uh, but yeah, I mean in general, I think um just persisting and
Okay.
like moving forward. I, you know, I wasn't like the most ambitious person, like, you know, type A, gotta go, you know, climb the ladder type of thing. But I think I mean, my dad says this thing, and I don't know if he got it from someone else, but he says that like 90% of life is showing up. Um, and I think that's very true. Like, you know, just being like, they would say, hey, can you teach this student last minute? And I'd be like, yep. And so like being able to be there, you know, they start to see your face and they start to think, oh, this person can do things. Or like, I remember one day they were like, you haven't been trained for this, but do you want to work with like this student? And I was like, okay. And who knows if it went well. I mean, I got through it. But
I'm the
again,
guy.
making them like people starting to be like, okay, this is someone we can use or count on,
I got you.
I think was something that definitely helped me get to where I am today.
It's cool. So say someone wanted to get into like your career as like a learning center director or maybe a similar position, what would be like a good first step for them to take or like a good direction for them to go? Like say that someone that's in high school or a younger adult, like what would be like a good first path to start looking towards or going down?
Um, I mean,
Aside from watching this video.
yeah, definitely watch this video and utilize all of the resources that you're offering because those I imagine will be super helpful. But I would say for a person who say is in high school or even like early in college would be to first of all really just take a second and assess like what is it you like to do, what is it that you're good at, and figure out if that's something that you would want to then pass on to other people. And if sharing whatever your gift is in kind of an educational way, instructional way, is something that you think would be shareable or that you would want to do it, like I think that's something that's important because there's some people that just don't want to be teachers, and so like finding out if you want to is really important. And then from there, again, there's not necessarily a whole lot of formal classes that you would
Yeah.
like have to take or anything because again, I don't have like a degree in education or anything like that. But I would say maybe talk to the people nearest to you, like talk to your teachers, ask them things about what how they got into it. Find out more of like the behind the scenes, so to speak, because I think that's something that will help you realize whether or not maybe this is for you. But and then you know, from there apply, I guess.
Do you
um,
do you think doing kind of like what you did in high school, like maybe volunteering in a classroom, would be like a good way to kind of like test the waters and see if you kind of like what you're doing?
yeah. I mean, I know there are a lot of things, obviously with COVID, like stuff is fairly different than it used to be, but you know, maybe there's like an after school program that local school is running where like you can tutor, you know, if you're a high school student, you can tutor a middle school student,
Yeah.
or maybe there's like a community center where people can come in and get homework help, or maybe you have like, I mean, even if you have like a little brother or a little sister, and do you enjoy helping them, or is it like tear your hair out frustrating, you know? Um, and so, yeah, I think that doing things like that, you know, it doesn't have to be like standing in front of a classroom with like, you know, okay, I'm going to teach the class now, and it doesn't have to be that formal. So, yeah, I definitely think that those are things where you can get a really good sense of whether or not this is something for you.
Yeah. So do you feel like for you in your position, like, is there another like step up for you, or is it like a long-term career goal like within this that you want to get to?
So there's really not another step in the like latter sense of I'm kind of at the top. I mean, I guess theoretically I could maybe be the director of multiple centers,
Okay.
which has, that does happen. I don't know if that's necessarily practical with like our centers, just because that would be a lot. Um, but I think that for now, given that I've only been in this position, I mean, not a year, maybe I think it's a year in September. Um, this is definitely where I want to be right now. And I'm still getting, I mean, the amount of things I've learned, whether or not I thought I could do them, um, in the last few months or several months, I'm still learning so much and getting so much out of this position as far as like things new stuff. And like I said, the fact that there's so much difference every day, it's not like the doing the same thing over and over and over again and getting bored with it. And so in that regard, the fact that there's variety keeps it interesting to me. Whether that means I'm teaching different stuff or I'm working with different people or we have different projects or whatever. And so, yeah, for now, I definitely foresee myself being in this for a good amount of time.
I got you,
Um,
man. Maybe
what
someday you'll open your own center.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It's definitely something that could could happen. Or, maybe I eventually go into the classroom, or maybe I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I honestly I don't know where this might lead, but um it's certainly, I think maybe the next step, and this is just kind of off the top of my head, but moving into some kind of larger educational role, like maybe working for a school district or
Okay.
something like that. Um, Curriculum development, program planning, some kind of organizational project, something like that. I could very well see how a lot of the skills I'm learning here could
Yeah.
translate into something like that. So yeah, that's something that, I haven't explored, but I'm pretty certain would be very, very helpful to have my background in
Yeah.
something like that.
And you got time to.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what type of personality do you feel like would best fit into the career that you're in? Is like running like as a director, but also kind of like the tutoring side of things as well. So, kind of like the slash there.
Well, the cool thing that I've sort of seen over the years I've worked here is that there isn't necessarily a typical personality. We have people who are super outgoing and, could talk to a rock, and, they can talk to anybody. They're very extroverted. Um, we also have people who like are fairly, I wouldn't say shy, but maybe more introverted. Like certainly I'm not the most outgoing person. And so um, I think I'm somewhat living proof that you don't have to be like a super bubbly, over the top personality type person to be able to do this. And so I think more than more than what kind of person you are, it's just having the desire to help the students. And
Okay.
that's something that whenever we're doing stuff, if we're working on something and we're getting kind of lost in the weeds and how do we do this and how do we do that and what's our goal and all this stuff, we always come back to like, okay, how is this going to help the student?
Yeah.
And so I would say, I guess, an attribute that is pretty consistently in our staff across the board is like being giving. giving of your time, giving of your energy, giving of your effort, obviously giving of your knowledge. And so that would be something that I would say is maybe not completely required, but it's pretty helpful.
Okay. That sounds good. I definitely think that's kind of what you said, is you have to be someone who wants to help people with learning.
Mhm.
That's got to be more of
Yeah.
like, that's good to hear too, because I mean, a lot of people I think feel like, oh, I have to be introverted or extroverted or type A or type B personality to do this job. But I think what kind of what you're
Yeah.
saying is that it's anyone can do it, but it just, you have to have like that personal inner drive of like wanting to help people with education.
Yeah, yeah. And so like, for people who might be watching this video who might think, oh, I'm not like outgoing enough to be a teacher, or I'm not like talkative enough, or whatever, insert adjective here, like that isn't necessarily the case. And so don't, don't count yourself short. There are plenty of people who didn't fit the mold who ended up being great. We have a teacher here, for example, who when he started out, he was kind of, quiet and stuff like that. And he's really grown into his role. And now this is what he does full time. And, so maybe it isn't, the easiest start, but like you can grow into it. And so, yeah, I don't think people should ever discount themselves out of a particular field because they don't fit the mold.
Yeah.
At the very least, try it. And,
Yeah.
maybe it's not for
Happens.
you, maybe it is.
So kind of on that same idea of like imparting some wisdom, do you have any, for anyone who watches this, anyone who's interested in doing something like yourself, whether it's tutor, running their own center, maybe owning a center, whatever it may be, do you have any like words of wisdom, advice, I don't know, any things that helped you get through hard times on your journey here, anything like that at all?
Um,
Trevor's corner right now.
yeah, so I mean, kind of like what I said a few minutes ago, if you're ever, there are definitely days, whether it's being a teacher in a classroom or working somewhere like here, where maybe things aren't going your way, or you're just frustrated, or you don't know what to do. And just bringing it back to the student and the fact that like they are the center of what we do, and their betterment and their progress is what motivates everything that we work for. And so I think that reminder, using them as kind of a touchstone of, okay, this is why I'm doing this, or like, how should I approach this? Well, what's the best for the student? That sort of thing. And that's very much the mantra, so to speak, of our owner, of, okay, what is at the end of the day, when everything is all said and done, like what is the great purpose to what we're doing? And that is to help students. And so just reminding oneself of that fact, I think, can sometimes make things a little bit easier. And then I would say that the other thing is to, how would I put this? Like there are definitely things that, there's not like a one-way path to getting to doing something like this. And so um, I would say that it's really open for anybody. And so this is something some people do for a year, or this is something some people do like forever. So, education is not something that you have to like commit to for the rest of your life. It could be something that you do and you learn from and you enjoy it, and then you go on and do something else. So, I would say that approaching it that way as like, okay, I could be here a year, I could be here forever. You just don't know. So people who might think, oh gosh, I couldn't be a teacher forever, like you don't have to. um, so I think everybody at one point in their life can benefit from being a teacher, whether it's in a formal sense or in a more informal sense. And so this is just a great place to do that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's like words of wisdom, but
No, I like it. I like it. I like it.
yeah.
Any tidbits are helpful. So I have two more questions for you that are a little bit more like
Mhm.
personal questions, just kind of like, so I like to ask people random stuff.
Yeah.
What do you do in your free time when you're not at work?
So in my free time,
You say
I
you
mean,
just watch
obviously,
Netflix because it's COVID time. I understand.
right, yeah. So it's definitely restricted by like what I can do and where I can go.
Before COVID, maybe what was it? What did you do in free time? I don't know.
I mean, I very much like to read, so books are definitely my thing. Like, I really enjoy uh, just like getting in a book. Another thing that I really enjoy doing in my free time is like spending time with my dog. Um, he is actually just outside this door. I take him to the office now. And he, yeah, he comes
Big
every
white
day.
Malamute, right?
What?
He's the big white Malamute, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the Pyrenees, yeah.
Pyrenees. I said Malamute.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and so I like to spend time with him. Obviously, I spend tons of time with my fiance.
Okay.
You know, we like to go before COVID, you know, just explore the city and like
Yeah.
find fun stuff to do. But really, I mean, like you mentioned, this is something that I enjoy so much. Obviously, like I need downtime and you know, I can't work like for at like a million hours a week, but like this is something I just enjoy. And so in a way, I yeah, I get a lot out of being here.
You're
Um,
always like living for the weekend, is what you're trying to say.
right, exactly. And like
Oh,
sometimes I am like there are definitely days where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to go home. Um, but yeah, I think, you know, I definitely have my own hobbies and interests and things I like to do in my free time. I mean, I love sports. Like I love to watch sports. Um, it's harder to play sports these days, but um, you know, I think that there's a lot of what I do here that I enjoy that I would count as like an interest or a
yeah.
hobby that I get to do.
It's positive though, so it sounds like a lot of what you enjoy doing outside of work is what you're doing at work.
For sure. Yeah. Like, for example, the things I'm reading might be like something that I end up teaching
Yeah.
someday. You know, it's like a history book, or I mean, my fiance like makes fun of me all the time, but like if I'm reading a math book and she's like, dude, what is wrong with you? And but you know, I enjoy learning, and
Yeah.
so then get to learn things that I can maybe pass on to someone else.
Yeah. I know it was one thing that I really got to know about you when I lived back in Portland with y'all was I feel like you're always seeking knowledge. And I think that you want it for yourself, but I also think that that's just your passion in life is giving it to other people. And I think you're a lot like myself where if someone asks something, you're like, I know the answer and I want to be able to tell
Yeah,
you versus like, I don't
I
know,
know.
you're on your
Yeah,
own.
whether or not they want to hear it all, I'll tell you everything. Yeah,
So
exactly.
one more good funny question because I know what I hope you say. You might not say it, but if you don't say it, I'm just gonna say it for everybody else anyway. So like that. If someone didn't know you, what's like a secret talent that you have that people wouldn't know when they first met you?
So probably the one that you're thinking of is the
Yeah.
fact that I speak Chinese.
Yes.
So that would definitely be something that uh, you wouldn't know just by looking at me. So I would say that's maybe the most unexpected talent of mine.
One of my favorite stories, also, by the way, whenever someone talks about learning Chinese, I'm like, I gotta tell you about my friend Trevor. He's like 6'4", 6'5", he's from Dallas, Texas, and you speak Cantonese or Mandarin?
Mandarin.
He speaks Mandarin almost fluently. And the first time I heard him speak it, I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What's this big tall white dude speaking in Chinese? What the hell's going on around me?
Yeah, yeah, I remember. Yeah, you probably nearly fainted. Um, I
Probably.
think the people I was talking to probably nearly
Yeah,
fainted.
their faces were like white, like, oh shit.
Yeah. So that would definitely be something and honestly, like again, I think one of the biggest things that maybe people would be surprised to hear is that like growing up and even now I consider myself like a fairly shy person, but I would imagine that like through the course of this interview or if you like saw me in my day to day, you wouldn't necessarily think that. So, um, yeah, I would say that's something that
Is there another one that I don't know about that maybe is like somewhere on par?
of
Kind
like things you like
of like
surprising things about me. Um,
or maybe something that you're better at than the average person that I wouldn't expect.
gosh, I don't know. I would that's something I might
Aside from like having your photographic memory where I swear you read something one time and you're like, boom, I remember that. And I'm like, bro, we read that one time and it was like on a slide for work. Like, how do you remember that?
Oh, well, yeah, I wish, but hmm, I I don't know. I guess hmm, I don't know. I don't know, man.
Oh, it's
I
fine,
mean,
fine, fine, fine. I had to throw some
yeah,
out.
I'm not sure. I like I said, I do think I don't know, maybe it just surprises me. Maybe other people aren't as surprised. Like knowing how I grew up and like how to myself, like I kept to myself fairly often, like I don't know, I'm still surprised sometimes that like I do what I do or I've done what I've done and like even yeah, if you had told me when I was in grade school, like, yeah, one day you're gonna be like, okay, I'm going to China and fly 6,000 miles across the world and go work there, like I would have been like, dude, you're nuts. So I don't know. Again, maybe that's just something I'm more surprised in myself about than other people would be, but um, yeah, I would say um, yeah, yeah.
No, it's fine. It's good. It's good. No, I would. I really wanted to bring up the Chinese thing just because I was thinking in my head. I was like, I wonder if someone's gonna watch this and be like, he was teaching English as a second language in China. Like, how did he do that if he didn't speak Chinese? You never mentioned that you spoke Chinese this whole time. So I was like, I know it's implied, but I could see someone being like, that doesn't make how could he speak, like teach English if he didn't if they didn't speak Chinese?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the fact that I taught older students meant that they tended to have a foundation in English, so like we could generally do most stuff in English.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And,
Okay.
yeah, but outside of teaching, like I didn't, you know, people where I lived did not speak English at all, and or very, very few. And so, just day to day, I relied on it all the time. Um, so yeah, it was not to say that like you have to speak. I had plenty of coworkers who didn't speak a word,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
still managed to
Have a job.
do their thing. Yeah. So, you know, for people who might want to do that, don't think that's like a prerequisite. You don't have to. It's certainly, you certainly get more out of being there because you can like talk to people and interact with the world around you, but it's not like required.
Got you. So that's pretty much what I have, my good friend. What I'm gonna do at this point in time is once I get the video posted and published,
Mhm.
I'll reach out to you again, verifying that you. I mean, you can do it now if you want to. I just want to put you on the spot. If you maybe want to give out your contact info, so if anybody has any questions about maybe going to the learning center, doing classes there, or maybe someone has any questions about your experience, I don't even know.
Yeah, no,
I
I'd be,
can
I
put it
mean,
there. You can say it now, whatever you want to do.
yeah, I mean, it would probably be easier to do it like post video
Yeah.
production.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if people would remember it off the top of their head.
I got you. I got you.
But yeah, I mean, where I work is Huntington Learning Center. You know, you can Google, you can go to www.huntingtonhelps.com, and that will give you a pretty good rundown of all the different things that we provide. And what we do and all that fun stuff. And then, yeah, I'll, be sure to send you my contact information. And then if you want to either put it across the screen or like as an attachment or however you want to present it, that works for me. But yeah, anyone who ever has any questions about anything, whether it's teaching or something else, like I'm always happy to try to help. I don't know if I will be able to help, but I'm always happy to try.
No, it's greatly appreciated. But yeah, man, thank you very much for doing the interview.
Yeah.
And I'll throw Trevor's contact info somewhere in this video or somewhere in the comments or description or whatever. So if you guys have any questions, like he said, feel free to reach out. And if he doesn't know, he'll probably tell you he doesn't know. And if he does, he'll give you the answer.
And if I don't know, I'll look it up and I will research it. That's something I definitely enjoy doing is research. So
no, I understand. Always seeking knowledge.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, thank you again very much, Trevor. I appreciate it, and I'll hopefully talk to you real soon, my man.
All right, you are very welcome.
Do you have anything else?
Nope, I think that's it. I have to go to a teacher meeting in a few minutes, so this is perfect timing.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again. Have fun in your meeting, and I'll talk to you soon, my man.
All right, bye, Ethan.
Bye.